I've been kind of wanting to do a video for a little while now. I just haven't. So I'm gonna record the video and either put it up or not put it up. I don't know yet. Um, it's something that's close to me, so I talk about it openly, but it's different to put it out there on YouTube for anyone and everyone to see. So hopefully I can put it up. We will see. So basically, I want to start off by saying you already see the title of the video. You know what it's about. I am a survivor of sexual abuse as a young child. I was abused by somebody who was very close to me. It was my father. It took place from the age of 11 to about 17. The end of it wasn't, I say about 17 because the last year or so, not a whole lot happened, mostly emotional and verbal abuse. There was some physical abuse in an attempt to cause sexual abuse, but at that point I was fighting back more, so it wasn't the sexual abuse so much in that last year. I feel nervous. So basically, the reason I want to make this video isn't so I can just talk about it. It's because one thing that I try to stress to everyone when I talk about it, and the reason I talk about it is because I felt for the longest time that I was very alone. I felt like nobody in my family would understand. Nobody in my family would look at me the same way. I didn't know anybody who had been through anything like that. It was my father that was doing it, so I felt terrified of what would happen if I said anything. I have a big family, and one of the things that he would threaten me with is, if you tell on me, then your whole family will blow up, your siblings will go somewhere else, you'll never see them again. He made the threats of, if you call the police, when they get here, you guys will be dead and buried in the backyard. So there were a lot of factors that kind of kept me quiet. I did actually reach out during those years to somebody online. I didn't know the person. I had concerns about possibly getting pregnant. I know my dad had a vasectomy, so it couldn't happen, but I had very irregular periods, and I think now looking back, a lot of that, the very irregular periods, meaning sometimes that wouldn't happen for about 6 months, and then also chronic migraines almost daily for that entire time. I think that all probably just stemmed from stress, honestly. I didn't realize that at the time. I just thought, oh my god, I haven't had a period in so long. I know, not to be gross, there was discharge that I would have afterwards sometimes, which I had mentioned to the person that I was talking to online. And I was expressing my concern for pregnancy, which I knew couldn't happen, but as a child, of the many things I was terrified about, that, even though maybe it wasn't rational, was one of them. And that was just really stressful and scary. And yeah, I'm gonna get off topic. I'm gonna jump around a bit. There's so many things bouncing through my mind right now, so bear with me. I'm hoping that this video isn't too long, but there's a lot of information. Obviously, I'm not going to get into any details. I'm sure you can imagine. Maybe you can't. Hopefully you can't. But anyways, the reason I wanted to put this video up is because I want other people, other young children, boys, girls, whoever, who might be experiencing something like this, if they come across this video, I want to tell you you are not alone. Find one person that you can trust, and you tell them. No matter what happens, it's better than what you're going through right now. I wanted to tell my family so many times, and I was terrified of the million things that could come from that. But I was also terrified every single morning and every single night, knowing that at some point between me falling asleep and 4 in the morning, most likely my dad was going to come in and attempt something, or whatever the case was. There were times when I shared a room with my sister. There was a time when I shared a room with my youngest brother. There was one time, we have a big family, and the house we grew up in had 3 bedrooms. We ended up making the attic a bedroom. It was actually kind of cool. My brother lived up there. It's going to be a rough video, so I apologize ahead of time. So we had 3 bedrooms. My dad's bedroom was probably the size of 2 bedrooms, really. It was pretty massive, and he had a big walk-in closet. So when all of this first started, I was sleeping in my dad's room. At that point, I want to say my sister Tara hadn't been living there yet. She moved in a couple years after, I want to say. And so I believe either my younger sister and younger brother shared a room, and my older brother had his own room, or my older brother was up in the attic at that point, and my 2 younger siblings had their own room. I don't quite remember those details. I remember where I was. I remember that my dad had a bunk bed in his room at that point, and the bottom bed was the queen and the top was the twin. And my youngest brother and my dad shared the bottom bunk, and I was on the top bunk. Seems very weird. It was very weird. I'm sure he had a plan for why he did that. Yeah, my mom at that point wasn't in the picture. She had moved away. So it was my dad and the 5 kids that they had. And so that's kind of when it started. I was around 11 years old, and at first I didn't even know what was going on. I was confused, and, this is my dad, so I didn't think anything that he would do would be wrong. That didn't register for a while. But then I remember thinking, probably 6 months or so later, that my brother is sleeping on the bed right below us, and this doesn't feel right. In the beginning, it was very light sexual abuse, so I think he was easing into it. And at the point where I started to think about my brother is when it got more intense, and that's when I kind of realized, I don't think this is right. This doesn't seem right. My brother's right there. What if he sees or hears or whatever, And that's me at 11 years old, having to deal with that and think about that. And I mean, I can't even believe that this is my life. Sometimes my wife's heard me say it a million times, like, I can't believe that this is my life. I thought that so many times growing up, as I got older and you hear about things like this, which I didn't hear much about, but you hear a little bit more about it and realize, or I was talking online to strangers, and, you realize how awful it is. And I spend so many nights just thinking, how is this my life? Why is this my life? What did I do? What did he do? What's the matter with the situation? Like, is it because my mom left? Is it because he's just a sick individual? Is it because of something that I did? And at the time when I was 11, I wasn't, I mean, obviously I was attractive in some sense to him because he's sick in the head, but I was a very flat, boyish kid. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it just had to be the part of him that was attracted to children, not necessarily like, people sexualize women's chests and things, but I don't think it was about that so much. It was about that I was young and I've always been a very nice, caring, sweet person. Not saying it's my fault that I did something that I was a certain way and it caused it, but I feel like maybe he felt it was easier with me because maybe I just seemed like I was going to just fall in place and do what I was supposed to do that he told me to do. And it kind of did work that way for a little while. But I spent many of those moments with him just crying and pleading for him to stop and to pretend like he loves me, and just begging so many times and sobbing in bathrooms where my siblings are sleeping right next to that bathroom. So I also spent so many times just thinking, like, who knows in the house? Because I know for a fact now that a couple did, but at the time, I have a lot of siblings. And at that point, my stepsister had moved in as well. And it's crazy to think that they have seen and heard things that maybe they knew what was going on, maybe they didn't know what was going on, but I know that they've seen and heard things. And I don't know if I'll ever know the extent of that. Maybe when we get older we can all talk about it more. We've talked about it a little bit now. My siblings are all between 22 and 32, so it's been a while. My dad's been in prison for 12 years now. So I remember when this all first came out, and I had just moved out, I want to say in the summer of 2006, and I remember I had my 18th birthday at my new place with my roommates, and my dad came over, and I forget if we started off outside or if we were inside, and he said to come out to his truck. I think he said to come out to his truck. And he tried to give me wine, at least that's what he said it was, which I was 18, I didn't drink at the time. I mean, I drank shortly after that with my friends a lot, but it was just very weird, and I was grateful that it was daytime. We were outside in a car. Nothing really came of it, but I know he was trying to get me drunk. Shortly after that, I finally had the courage to come home from work one day and tell someone. I won't go into detail why I did that, because I want to keep other people's privacy to themselves, but there was something that kind of crossed my mind and made me think, I need to do this now. There's no time to waste. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to say it out loud, so I wrote a long letter kind of summarizing everything. And as dumb as this sounds, at the age of 18, I thought that this whole time I had been being molested. I didn't realize that I had actually been raped until the detective was there and asked me further questions and then told me, well, then you've been raped. And I remember feeling so stupid at 18 years old, not realizing this whole time that that's technically what it was. I was obviously thinking about so many other things that I didn't think too much about it, but I remember when the detective asked me, I had mentioned just molestation, which it was so much more than that. But anyway, I wrote down everything, and I remember texting my roommates. It was my stepsister Tara and my two friends from high school, and I told them that I wrote them a letter. It's underneath my door. please come and read it. And everything after that moved so fast. We called my stepmom, and I believe her and my older stepsister came. I know my stepmom definitely came over. I think my sister came as well. And then we ended up calling the police and doing a report, and I feel like it was a few days later that my dad finally got picked up, which was the scariest few days I've ever experienced. It was hard going through the trauma I went through, but one of my fears growing up was that he would kill me or hurt me or kill my family. And at the time that this was all happening, when I told on him finally, he was living with my stepmom and my two youngest siblings at the time. So my thought is, what if he finds out or freaks out and does something to them? And I know my stepmom had to go back and be in the house with him after this, so that was probably extremely hard for her, I can imagine. But I remember I was at work, and I was just thinking, like, he's going to show up, something's going to happen. Even when we were in the police department, or the police station, and they were picking him up, and we were waiting, I could see through a door into the hallway, and I was just terrified that I was going to see him walk by. Even though I know that if he did, he would have been with police officers, but that was a big fear of mine, is that he wouldn't be, or that he would get free, and who knows what he would have done. So, I don't know. I went to therapy right after the police recommended it. It was somebody who worked with victims of sexual abuse, and I talked very openly about it. The only thing I wasn't open about was my 100% honest feeling. And I felt like for a lot of my life, I had to be a strong person for everyone else, and most of my life I've been someone who tries to just please people, and it doesn't matter if it hurts me, I need to please people. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with my dad and what went down, but I felt like I was portraying a strong person to my therapist and wasn't being real and raw about how I really was, because I was terrible. I called into work quite a few times after that point. Probably almost lost my job, honestly. I think if she hadn't known me for so long and liked me so much, she probably would have fired me. So I'm glad she didn't. I still work there. I ended up going back to therapy probably 8 years later, something like that. And that's when I was actually able to just be real about it. And I even told her, I didn't use this properly last time. It didn't necessarily help me because I wasn't being open. It helped me in the sense that I was talking about it. I talked about it a lot of times after it finally came out. It was very weird because I spent 7 years not talking about it at all, except that one conversation I had with that person online who was a stranger, a complete stranger that I'd never spoke to again. I'd never spoken about it, only in my head or to my dad. And as soon as I wrote that letter, I've repeated that story so many times, sometimes with more detail, sometimes with less detail. It depends on the person I'm talking to. But I know I had to give a police report, and I told my family, and I've had conversations since then with some of my siblings. Not so much my younger ones for a long time, because when I first came forward, I was 18. My youngest sibling was maybe 10, they were pretty young, and I knew that they knew the gist of what was going on. I just didn't know how much they knew, and I felt like it was hard enough for me to deal with all of this that I didn't want to put that kind of burden on them at that age. Also, right after this, I threw myself into relationships, very intense relationships. I've been a serial monogamous for a long time. Just, I would date one after another, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 6 months, but very committed relationships, even though I was being false there too because I tried to be straight for a very long time. Um, I was never fulfilled in that way. I was never fulfilled really in any of my relationships other than my current relationship. I'd been engaged twice before because they asked me and I said yes. I didn't really want to marry them, and at some point before we even started planning weddings, I did end up splitting up with them. I know the one I split up just because I told him I didn't have feelings, and the other one was when I finally came out as gay when I was 23. And well, I was 22 because he knew for about a year and tried to, I don't know, convince me that we would work, and it was nothing to me. I took care of his kids for 2 years, and I loved those kids, but him and I had nothing. I was, in my opinion, brainwashed and just taken advantage of like normal. Um, I just feel like I'm all over the place, so I apologize. There's just so much going on in my head right now. I'm trying to keep things in chronological order, but I'm not even doing that very well. Not even sure how long this is right now. Lighting is terrible. Great. Anyway, I just want to talk about this because I've tried over the last 12 years to be very open about it. If someone asks where my dad is, what my dad's doing, whatever, he's in prison. He sometimes I'll say he sexually abused his children. Sometimes I'll say he sexually abused me. Sometimes I'll say he was a bad parent. Sometimes I'll say he was an abusive parent. Depends on who I'm talking to and how much detail I want to give them. But if it's one that I trust even a little bit, I'll talk about it because maybe they were abused. Maybe this is their window to talk about their abuse. Maybe somebody will overhear me and then they'll feel like, oh my god, she was abused. Look how good she's doing right now. She's got her shit together. You know, I mean, I can't take back what happened to me. If I can just be someone else's light or encouragement after all of this, then I would be plenty happy with that. You know, I wish YouTube was bigger when I was younger because I feel like I would have gone on there and I would have come across things like this. I wasn't, if it was big then, I wasn't aware of it. Um, I just used Yahoo chat rooms and would just talk to random people about random things, and I would be some fake profile so no one could, come back to find me later. But I would have loved to be able to pull up a YouTube video and hear from somebody who experienced it, and to know that yes, you could have a bad rest of your life from this. Yes, you could become addicted to drugs. You could be an alcoholic. You could be a terrible parent, unemployed your whole life, or you can keep moving forward. Try and try and try again. You will make mistakes. Yes, this is damaging. You will have effects from this for the rest of your life. But you can do this. You can move forward. That's all I want people to know. It's a terrible, terrible thing that happens. And it happens so often. So unbelievably often. Now that I've come forward about it, I've heard from a lot of family and a lot of people who have experienced it. Different abusers, different situations, different everything, but same trauma. And I'm fortunate in the sense that my family, for the most part, has been very supportive, and I know that in 5 years, when my dad is up for appeal, they will support me and fight to keep him in there. I know that. And that even though it terrifies me that in 5 years he could potentially be getting out of prison, knowing that I have people who support me and will be there to help defend me and keep him there kind of keeps me from breaking down. So I'm very fortunate in that way. I didn't know if I'd be able to get through this video, and I don't know if I'll put it up. It's I'm fine being vulnerable, but to an extent, I guess. I've never put anything this raw up before, so if you're seeing this, I'm already embarrassed. But I'm doing okay. I've overcome some of my obstacles in my life, in relationships, and from within myself. I finally feel some self-worth, which I did not feel most of my life. I only got to that point a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, when I met Erica was right when I was starting to feel like me and be comfortable in my skin and know what I will and will not tolerate from people. I spent a lot of relationships being abused and taken advantage of. And before I met her, I was single for, I want to say, about a year, which is the longest I'd ever been single. And I was living on my own. I had a roommate, but I was living on my own. I had a steady job, 2 jobs actually. I was just working away. You know, I focused on me. I was exercising. I was in good shape. I was mentally stable. I was happy for the first time in a very long time. You know, a lot of my childhood, I think I appeared happy. And there were moments, you know, some of those moments were usually the ones that I spent with my siblings, or if we had family events, which we didn't so much in my later teens because we moved up to Traverse City. Most of my family lives downstate. But I hated high school, and I remember being so happy to be in school because that meant that I wasn't home. And to me, home was a bad place. And when we moved up here, we lived right down the street from the beach. So we spent many afternoons and evenings, just me and the kids, just down at the beach. And those were really good times. So I had moments of happiness, but overall, that was a very depressing 7 or so years of my life. And that depression continued for another 5, 6, 7 years, something, I don't know, I'm not going to think about that right now and count it out, but when I was 23 and the guy I had just broken up with, who I still lived with, threw me out, I lived with my stepmom for 3 months and just worked my ass off, saved up money, and moved into a place with my friend from high school. And I just kept climbing from there, just working hard, focusing on me, not trying to date. I did date a little bit, but it wasn't anything serious, and mostly it was to dabble in my sexuality because I had never dated women before. And I knew for a long time, I knew when I was about 12 that I was attracted to women. I just didn't know that I could be gay, I think. I have one relative who is gay. I know I had heard some of his experiences, and it was intimidating because he grew up in a different time than I did, and it wasn't as talked about then as it is now. Um, so I just remember being intimidated by that, and I didn't want to put myself in that situation. Not to mention, most of my teen years were spent in this tunnel of constant, terrified depression. And I couldn't even imagine trying to be with anybody. I had boyfriends all the time because I was Kelly. I was a pretty little white girl who should be dating guys, and so I did that a lot. To me, they reminded me of boyfriends and girlfriends from like elementary school, where your boyfriend and girlfriend, you walk together, you hold hands together, you might, kiss on the cheek, maybe a kiss on the lips once in a while, but it was very elementary. Not until I moved out of my parents' house did I ever get intimate with anybody. Um, yeah, so I've worked through a lot of my issues, but I don't feel like I'll ever get through all of my issues because there are some things that I think are just burned into my soul now, and I'm aware of them, and I try every day to work through them, but I feel like it's literally altered who I am, and I'm constantly having to correct my direction in those situations, which, it is what it is. I would rather do that my whole life than continue to be abused, so, I'd rather not have any of that, but I can't take that back. But anyways, if you are experiencing this, or if you have experienced this, keep trying, don't give up. You can be happy, you can have whatever you want. It might be harder for you, you might have to work for it, but you can do whatever you need or want to do. Trust me. I'm very proud of where I've come after all of that. And, one day I'll be blessed to be a mother, and I'll be an amazing mother. I'll be terrified all the time because it's hard to trust people now, but I don't know. I'm excited to be a good parent and be a good role model, and to know that my kids will be comfortable talking about anything they experience, good or bad. And if they want to be gay, or if they want to be a Christian, or if they want to, whatever, I will support them. I will love them. I will be there for them. They will know that they can talk to me. That's one thing that I'm most excited about in my life. So I can't wait for that to actually happen, to actually be a mother. But in the meantime, we'll keep working on that. It's been about 3 years now that we've been trying, so can't be that much longer, right? So anyway, I hope I do post this. I've really been wanting to. I don't know yet, so please feel free to comment, share. If I'm uploading this, then I'm biting the bullet, and I don't really care at that point who watches it, so share it all you want, comment, like, don't like, whatever you want to do. I probably won't make another video about this. I wanted to try to keep this one all to itself, but you never know. We'll see what comes from it, but I think that's about it. Yeah, I just want anyone who needs to talk about anything to please, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on YouTube, find me on Instagram, shoot me a message. It can be private, I can keep secrets. If you just need to talk, I'm here. I will listen until I'm blue in the face. I will talk back. Hopefully I can help. Hopefully I can give some kind of peace. If not, I'll at least listen. And, I want to help anyone that I can from this. It was a very difficult which is putting it lightly, experience in my life, and I know it's hard for you as well. So I'm here if you need anything. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. I hope this wasn't hard for you guys to watch. It was hard for me to do, so I guess if it is hard for you to watch, then it's fair. Fair game. But anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay strong. You're beautiful. And you can do anything.